This is an open letter to the Catholic Church from victims and survivors of clerical abuse following the publication of IICSA's report into the Catholic Church, 10th of November 2020. This letter was issued by Richard Scorer, or he's one of the people that are issuing this letter. Richard Scorer is a good lawyer that wrote a book called Betrayed. I suggest that you get this if you want to understand the behaviour that the Catholic Church have been up to. It's a very good book to read. We want to thank IICSA for its report on the Catholic Church. We welcome its findings, highlighting the Church's gross failings to protect children and others from abuse. We are grateful that the inquiry has exposed the Church's treatment of victims and survivors when it comes to reparations and care, showing how the Church perpetrates an adversarial culture in their dealings with us. This letter has been signed by 20 sexual abuse victims, which is at the bottom of the letter. The report clearly shows the Church's lack of willingness and ability to change of its own accord. The reason the Catholic Church will not change of its own accord is because the Catholic Church believes that the laws that it has have been given to it by God and Jesus, even though Jesus would prefer you to read the Bible, and he never said anything about setting up a church in his name. In fact, he said, don't do that. There should be no comments or crocodile tears from church hierarchy saying this inquiry report is a wake-up call. The Catholic Church has been here before with the Noland report in 2001 and the Cumberley report in 2007. Cumberledge report in 2007, both followed by broken promises and shocking inertia. Well, one of the things that the Catholic Church did, especially St. Benedict's, is they issued an apology and then they carried on their same behaviour by insulting sexual abuse victims. The Church has had victims and survivors hammering on its door for decades, pleading with it to listen to our cries for help, to stop the abuse of us and others, and to put proper safeguarding measures in place, a theme repeated in evidence given at IICSA, which is the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse set up by Theresa May, the ex-Prime Minister of Great Britain. Colossal amounts of charitable status, church wealth have been used to employ lawyers, insurance companies to fight civil claims and to overpower victims and survivors with tactics to put us off pursuing cases or speaking out, exploiting any legal loopholes they can. The Church takes school fees off children and their parents that it then sexually abuses and uses those school fees to defend itself against priests and monks and abbots that they know full well are paedophiles and have been raping children. Every effort has been going into protecting the reputation of the Church, its resources, and focusing on providing care and support for our abusers, while neglecting us, the victims and survivors. So many lives have been ruined, and that doesn't involve the sexual abuse victims. It also involves their family and friends, their wives and their children. And some tragically ended. One boy shot himself in the eye who went to St. Benedict's school, and it took him 6 months to die. Not just because of horrendous sexual, physical and psychological and spiritual abuse, but by appalling cover-ups and a lack of action to protect us and others in the Church's care. The Church has burnt files from sexual abuse victims, children from elite Roman Catholic schools like Downside. It's withheld evidence. It's made evidence go missing, like video recordings of monks that have taken in the showers with boys, which have then shown up later. While we recognise some changes and improving attitudes in a few areas of the Church, they do not go far enough. We very much hope that IICSA will be as hard-hitting in its final report when making more specific recommendations. The Church doesn't really listen to recommendations because the Church believes that its recommendations come from Jesus and God, even though they also feel that raping children seems to perhaps be one of those recommendations Jesus has put onto those clerics and priests. We believe there is clear evidence that there must be mandatory safeguarding reporting, laws, and an independent body to be made responsible for the oversight of safeguarding. Without this, there is little hope of meaningful change when the church has repeatedly failed to regulate itself, with catastrophic consequences for so many. The church is not going to change. The church is a leopard. Asking the church to change is not going to happen. It believes its laws are absolute, and therefore if it changes any of those laws, it means that it's got it wrong, or that God hasn't given the correct rules, which means that perhaps the God that it purports to believe in is not the correct God, but is perhaps a Gnostic archon. There must be an end to the damage still being caused by a dysfunctional church with poor leadership and legal barricades that keep victims and survivors at arm's length. The Catholic Church will do anything it possibly can to try to demean the authority of an abuse victim. It sends them to psychologists to make sure that the psychologist says bad things about the victim in order to destroy its legal defense. The immense harm the church continues to inflict shows a complete lack of Christian values by which the church publicly claims to live by. Christian values and Christianity are two completely different things. Christian values are humanist values. They are things that you can find in nature or in the Bible. The Catholic Church sees itself as the vehicle for those values, but it is not a vehicle. Christian values can be found in anything, even outside of the Catholic Church and in different religions, because Christianity is supposed to be about love, and love isn't independent, or love is not dependent on the Catholic Church. Many of us were children when we were abused. For many of us, our abusers have now died. In the graveyards, there are paedophiles. But we have the rest of our lives to live. It's very difficult to live the rest of your life after you've been sexually abused because you die inside. I would say it's more realistic to say that you are alive rather than you have a life or that you are living. Carrying the damage and injury done to us, we are not here to be assigned to history and an inconvenient past that can be swept under the carpet. We are part of the future. Now that future, I understand, is to try to make changes to protect children. The future that these sexual abuse victims are trying to complete is a future for other people, not themselves. Nothing will cause us more despair than to be hearing more of the same, which you will be, with a future inquiry a few years from now. This is not a time to read and reflect, it is an unconditional demand for change. And this has been signed by RCA 117, RCA 711, RCA 2, Eamon Flanagan, RCA 343, Graham Wilmer, Daniel Mackle, RCA 23, RCA 20, Caroline Meakin, RCA 37, Deirdre McCormack, Stephen Bernard, D. Phil, Chris Spite, RCF1, Gerald McLaughlin, RCF6, Mark Murray, and Jim Kirby. These are the brave people that have managed to put their ciphers onto an open letter because of the church's profane abuse of power. And these people have come forward to try to secure the future of the next generation by trying to put safeguards onto the Catholic Church so that they cannot continue this corrupt behavior.